The California sun beamed down on the marble steps of the UCLA Political Auditorium as students, journalists, and activists poured into the building. The atmosphere buzzed with anticipation. Tonight's headline event, a nationally televised forum on the future of American democracy, featuring California Governor Gavin Newsom and newly appointed White House Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt. The contrast couldn't be sharper. Gavin Newsom, polished and practiced, with decades of political theater under his belt, stood as the crown prince of West Coast liberalism. Karoline Leavitt, 27, was the insurgent voice of a new right, relentless, unfiltered, and armed with the kind of conviction that made both allies and enemies nervous. The moderator's voice echoed, "Please welcome Governor Gavin Newsom and Press Secretary Karoline Leavitt." Applause erupted. Gavin stepped out first, waving with his signature confidence, his tailored navy suit catching the light. Moments later, Karoline appeared. She wore a simple red blazer over a white blouse, her cross necklace gleaming at her throat like a statement louder than words. She didn't wave, she didn't smile. She locked eyes with the crowd and walked straight to her podium. From the moment the debate began, Gavin's tone was smug, almost parental. "Karoline," he began, "young people like you need to understand the nuance of governing a nation. This isn't Twitter. This is real life." A few laughs sprinkled the audience. Karoline didn't flinch. "Oh, I understand reality, Governor," she replied coldly. "I understand what it looks like when California bleeds residents, when crime spikes and homelessness skyrockets, while you fly to Europe and call it climate diplomacy." The room shifted. The air tightened. Newsom's jaw flexed. "Well," he said, smiling tightly, "at least I don't spend my days defending a man who tried to overturn an election." Karoline leaned forward, her voice slicing through the tension. "I spend my days defending Americans from leaders like you, who think power gives them the right to wreck cities, silence dissent, and pretend failure is progress. You want to talk about democracy? Let's talk about the millions of people fleeing your so-called utopia." Gasps rippled across the room. Newsom blinked. "This kind of hostility doesn't build a country, Karoline. It divides it." Karoline's lips curled, her voice slow and sharp. "No, Governor. What divides this country is condescension, corruption, and policies that destroy the very people you claim to protect. And that's why I'm here. To say it plainly, you're what's wrong with America." Silence. Then, uproar. The moderator tried to speak, but the moment had already gone viral. Phones lit up. Hashtags trended. Karoline didn't break eye contact, not with Newsom, not with the audience, not with America. The moment Karoline's words, "You're what's wrong with America," hit the airwaves, they detonated online like a political flashbang. Within seconds, social media feeds ignited. Hashtags like Josh Leavitt Unleashed and Newsom Exposed started trending before the moderator could regain control. But inside the auditorium, Gavin Newsom wasn't done. He adjusted his tie slowly, his voice silky smooth. "So this is the new conservatism?" he asked, turning to the crowd for effect. Loud, angry, and hopelessly out of touch. Karoline folded her arms. "No, this is the new truth. And the reason it sounds loud to you is because you've spent so long in an echo chamber of flattery and filtered facts, you forgot what real accountability sounds like." Newsom laughed, but his eyes flickered. Just for a second. "Tell me something, Karoline," he said, his voice now darker. "Do you really think Americans want chaos over compassion? Do you think they want divisiveness over unity?" Karoline didn't blink. "I think Americans want leaders who stop pretending that compassion means letting fentanyl flow across the border or letting criminals roam free while working families live in fear." She turned to the audience now, voice rising just enough. "They want accountability, they want security, they want honesty, and they're not getting that from Gavin Newsom's California." This time, the crowd didn't know how to react. Some clapped, some booed. A few shouted back. A woman near the front stood up and called out, At least he's not pushing conspiracy theories. Karoline turned to her, her tone calm. And at least I'm not pushing policies that lead to tent cities outside elementary schools. The moderator finally leaned forward. We're going to pause for a moment. But neither of them moved, because Gavin wasn't finished. He took a step closer to the center, abandoning the fake calm. You stand there in your red blazer, fresh out of the MAGA war room, acting like you speak for America. You don't. You speak for a fringe that's shrinking by the day. Karoline didn't even turn. I don't need to speak for all of America, Governor. I speak for the ones you've ignored, the ones you've written off, the ones who still believe in hard work, family, faith, and freedom. The ones you call fringe, but who are quietly becoming the majority. She looked straight into the camera now, and they're done being silent. A hush fell over the room. This wasn't just a debate anymore. It was a reckoning. Outside the studio, the digital battlefield was raging. Inside, the tension was molten. Governor Gavin Newsom gripped the podium a little tighter now. The practiced coolness that made him a darling of coastal media was starting to crack. Karoline Leavitt had landed blows. Not just sound bites, but precision hits that dug beneath the polished veneer of progressive promises. He leaned forward. So you're the voice of morality now? A 20-something communications aide turned attack dog? Spare me the Patriot routine. Karoline smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. You don't need to believe I'm the voice of morality, Governor. You just need to explain why your state leads the nation in homelessness, overdose deaths, and failing public schools, while you fly to red states lecturing the rest of the country. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Gavin fired back, voice raised. And yet, people still flock to California. You know why? Because we lead on climate, healthcare, human rights, and taxes, Karoline snapped. You lead the nation in driving out the middle class. You lead in regulations that crush small business. You lead in turning once beautiful cities into war zones. The moderator tried again to intervene. Let's bring the tone down. But now it was personal. Newsom's jaw was clenched. You think people want your version of America? One ruled by suspicion and fear? Where every neighbor's an enemy and every migrant's a threat? Karoline's voice dropped, icier than ever. I think people want an America where their kids can walk to school without stepping over needles. Where laws are enforced. Where values matter again, not just vanity. She turned toward him, unflinching. You represent the rot that comes when image matters more than results, when politics becomes theater instead of leadership, and every time you smile for Vogue, someone in your state dies waiting for rehab you promised, but never funded. Boom. The audience was dead silent. Even Newsom stood still. Karoline stepped forward slowly now, her voice steady. I may be young, I may not have a title like yours, but I will never apologize for calling out failure, no matter how expensive its suit is. And then she turned back to the moderator. I'm ready for the next question. The cameras stayed fixed on her face, because for the first time in a long time, Gavin Newsom didn't have anything to say. The debate hadn't ended, but the fallout had already begun. Within minutes of Karoline Leavitt's final blow landing squarely on Gavin Newsom's polished image, clips were racing across the internet like wildfire. The most shared moment? Her icy declaration, I may not have a title like yours, but I will never apologize for calling out failure, no matter how expensive its suit is. It was being shared with hashtags like Newsom Shutdown, Karoline Unleashed, and Truth Over titles. Fox News went live with an emergency panel within 10 minutes. Sean Hannity, grinning ear to ear, played the clip twice. That was more than a takedown, he said. That was a political exorcism. Newsom didn't just lose the argument, he lost the room. Meanwhile, on MSNBC, Rachel Maddow tried to do damage control. Yes, Karoline was aggressive, she said carefully, but that doesn't mean she's right. It was theater, dangerous performative theater. But it was too late. The internet didn't care about spin, it cared about spectacle. and Karoline had just delivered a political spectacle of epic proportions. Twitter, or rather X, exploded. Influencers, former Trump officials, Gen Z conservatives, even disaffected liberals were sharing the moment. One viral tweet read, "Karoline Leavitt just told Gavin Newsom the hard truth on live TV." And he blinked. That silence? That was the sound of reality crashing through a well-groomed ego. And Gavin? He vanished from the post-debate press line. His team said he needed time to prepare for an international energy summit, but no one was buying it. The man who never missed a media moment had just lost one, badly. Karoline, on the other hand, stood in the hallway surrounded by reporters, cameras in her face. "Did you mean to humiliate the governor?" one asked. Karoline paused only a second. "I meant to hold him accountable. If that feels like humiliation, maybe that says more about him than me." Another reporter shouted, "Are you worried this level of aggression makes you unelectable?" Karoline turned, her voice sharp and clear. "If telling the truth with conviction makes me unelectable, then America has a bigger problem than I thought." And with that, she walked away, escorted by aides but not looking back. She didn't have to. The political world was already following her, whether it liked her or not. Back in Sacramento, Governor Gavin Newsom's office was in full-blown crisis mode. The usually sleek and calculated political operator was now dodging questions from his own press corps. His communications director paced in front of the governor's private office, phone in one hand, damage control memo in the other. "She called him out on national television and he froze," one staffer muttered. Newsom sat behind his desk, eyes fixed on a muted TV screen looping the debate replay. On it, Karoline Leavitt stood unwavering while he stared back at her, silent, jaw clenched. The moment was haunting him. "How bad is it?" he asked, his voice flat. "Bad," the aide replied. "She hit you on homelessness, the economy, immigration, crime. And you didn't punch back." His fingers tapped on the desk. "Schedule a sit-down interview with CNN. I need to reframe this." Meanwhile, across the country, Karoline wasn't interested in framing anything. She was interested in momentum. That same night she appeared on Tucker Carlson Uncensored, her tone sharper than ever. "I didn't go there to throw punches," she said. "I went there to tell the truth. And Gavin Newsom just proved everything I said by saying nothing at all." Tucker leaned in, eyes lit. "You broke through. No script, no spin. That moment felt raw, real." Karoline smiled faintly. "Because it was. I'm not a career politician. I don't speak in rehearsed platitudes. I speak like someone who's sick of watching this country fall apart while the people responsible hide behind headlines and PR teams." Clips of the appearance spread like wildfire again. Conservative voters, especially the younger base, flooded her DMs and public pages with praise. "I've never felt represented before. Until now." She speaks for the voiceless. Newsom speaks for himself. Finally, someone with backbone. But not everyone was thrilled. Hollywood elites and left-wing influencers began smearing her as dangerous, toxic, and far-right propaganda in heels. A handful of California-based donors even threatened to pull funding from Newsom's future campaigns if he didn't retake the narrative. But the narrative was gone. It had a new voice now, and Karoline Leavitt wasn't done. The morning after her Tucker Carlson appearance, Karoline's phone lit up with a call from a blocked number. She let it ring once, then picked up. "Karoline, it's Gavin." She didn't respond immediately, just leaned back in her chair, eyebrows raised. "I suppose you're calling to apologize for losing a debate on live television." His voice was low, a carefully measured tone laced with frustration. "You turned that discussion into a political circus. That wasn't leadership. It was performance." Karoline's voice was cool and steady. "No, Governor, what I did was confront a lie. What you did was run from truth. If I made noise, it's because you've been silent for too long." He paused. "You realize this isn't going away." "Good," she said sharply. "Neither am I." News outlets picked up on the rumored phone call within hours. The New York Times ran with Newsom versus Leavitt, the war of words turns personal. CNN's morning panel went defensive, arguing Leavitt was grandstanding and irresponsible with rhetoric. But Fox News, The Daily Wire, and hundreds of independent YouTubers called her outspokenness long overdue. At a town hall event in Texas, she walked on stage to a standing ovation. Veterans, young moms, working-class Americans, all erupting in cheers. "You said what we've been screaming for years," one woman shouted from the crowd. Karoline raised the mic, voice powerful but grounded. "America isn't dying because of ordinary people. It's dying because the elites who run this country think they can ignore us, lie to us, and lecture us from gated communities." She paused, gaze steady. "Well, I'm here to say, not anymore." Back in California, Newsom scrambled to organize a televised fireside chat with liberal hosts to soften his image. But the internet didn't forget. Clips of Karoline confronting him played side by side with his polished, wordy statements, and the contrast was devastating. Memes exploded across X. "Karoline, you're what's wrong with America." Newsom, "Let me explain systemic equity displacement frameworks." Caption, "We're not listening anymore." As Karoline's team finalized plans for a national tour, one thing became clear. This wasn't just a viral moment. It was a movement. 2 days later, Karoline sat in the green room of a conservative podcast studio in Nashville. Her phone buzzed. A message from her communications director popped up. "Breaking! Newsom has challenged you to a televised debate. National broadcast, prime time. He wants to set the record straight." She didn't blink, just replied, "Tell them I accept. Let's give America a real conversation." That night, the headlines screamed across both sides of the aisle. Karoline Leavitt to face Gavin Newsom in live debate on national stage. Twitter X exploded. Supporters posted, "She's fearless." Critics warned, "This could backfire." But Karoline didn't care. She knew what she stood for, and more importantly, who she stood with. In Sacramento, Newsom's team scrambled to prep him. Polling data showed suburban independents were starting to admire Karoline's bluntness. Worse, Gen Z, once a liberal stronghold, was sharing her clips non-stop. In a private room, Gavin's strategist leaned in and warned, "You're not debating a politician. You're debating a voice of a movement. If you underestimate her, she'll eat you alive." He adjusted his tie, his jaw tightening. "Then I won't." Back in D.C., Karoline held a strategy session with her inner circle. "No cue cards," she said. "No rehearsed lines. I'm going to speak from the gut." One advisor raised an eyebrow. "That could be risky." "So is letting him get away with lying to millions of Americans." As the debate date drew closer, the media frenzy reached new heights. Everyone, from YouTube commentators to mainstream anchors, had an opinion. But the real buzz was with the people. TikTok was flooded with edits of Karoline's takedowns. Truck drivers played her quotes on Bluetooth radios. Diner waitresses repeated her lines back to customers. The movement was no longer fringe. And when the first promotional poster dropped, showing her facing off against Newsom under a bold headline, "The Future versus the Failed," the internet erupted. Karoline stared at the graphic in her hotel room. Her cross necklace glinted in the low light. She whispered under her breath, "It's time." The night of the debate arrived like a thunderclap. Every major news outlet cleared their primetime slots. Across America, living rooms, college dorms, and bars tuned in. The stage was set in a minimalist, high-tech auditorium in Atlanta. Black backdrop, 2 podiums, 1 hour. No commercial breaks. Karoline stepped onto the stage first, confident, focused, wearing a sleek navy blazer with her signature cross necklace glinting beneath the lights. Her expression was calm, but behind her eyes, fire. Then Gavin Newsom entered, polished, smiling, perfect hair, his charm dialed to maximum. The moderator welcomed them both, then asked the first question. "Governor Newsom, why do you believe your policies represent the future of America?" He launched into a poetic speech about compassion, innovation, and California values. He painted a picture of a utopia, green energy, equity, universal health care. The crowd nodded politely. Polished, safe, predictable. Then it was Karoline's turn. She didn't smile. Governor Newsom's California is a warning, not a model. Homelessness is out of control. Businesses are fleeing. Families are terrified to walk their own streets. He calls it compassion. I call it collapse. A murmur rippled through the room. Newsom raised his eyebrows, slightly caught off guard, but he leaned in smugly. Karoline, your facts are outdated. She cut him off. No, Governor, I'm not using numbers from 5 years ago. I'm using videos posted this morning by Californians who are begging for someone to fix the nightmare you created. Gasps. Even the moderator blinked. Newsom laughed nervously. Look. No, you look! Karoline snapped. Your idea of leadership is banning plastic straws while fentanyl kills teenagers in San Francisco. You talk about inclusivity, but what about the Americans you're leaving behind? The audience erupted. Half with applause, half with protest. On social media, the clip of her takedown hit 1 million views before the moderator could even move on. Newsom tried to regain control. Let's not descend into theatrics. Karoline's voice dropped low, controlled. Governor, for working families, this isn't theatrics. This is survival. It was only 10 minutes into the debate, but the tone had been set. The moderator shifted gears, asking about rising crime. Gavin Newsom leaned in, cool as ever. Crime is a complex issue, and we're addressing root causes: poverty, housing, inequality. Karoline didn't wait for him to finish. Governor, you've turned root causes into excuses. You've let violent offenders walk free, then acted shocked when they strike again. That's not leadership. That's negligence. Newsom stiffened. That's an outrageous simplification. Tell that to the mother in Oakland whose child was shot by a repeat felon released under your watch. I spoke with her. She doesn't need complexity. She needed protection, and you failed her. There was a shift in the air, a hush. Even the audience felt it. Newsom tried to recover with a joke, something about Karoline lacking California nuance. But she wasn't playing. You hide behind language, behind consultants and curated compassion. But the truth is, real Americans, people who don't live behind gates and PR, are tired of you. They don't feel seen by you. They feel used. The moderator attempted to move on, but Karoline pressed forward. You call me extreme? You fund sanctuary cities while ICE agents bury their friends. You push gender policies into elementary schools while math scores collapse, and you dare lecture me on values? Now Newsom's polished facade cracked, just slightly. His next words fumbled. That's not an accurate portrayal. It's reality, Karoline snapped. And for once, it's staring you in the face. Twitter exploded. Newsom exposed trended within 5 minutes. Even liberal commentators went silent. Conservative hosts called it the moment California's golden boy melted. And Gavin knew it. His jaw clenched. His nostrils flared, but he couldn't stop the bleeding. Not tonight. Karoline wasn't just debating. She was unmasking, and he had nowhere left to hide. The air in the studio had changed. Gavin Newsom, once the picture of West Coast charm and political polish, now sat rigid. His smile was gone, replaced by a thin line of frustration. Karoline Leavitt, on the other hand, looked more alive than ever, focused, unflinching, as if this entire confrontation had been the arena she'd trained for her whole life. The moderator leaned in, hesitant. Final words, 1 minute each. Governor Newsom? Gavin straightened his tie, forcing composure. Despite tonight's tone, I believe in civil discourse. I believe in progress. And I still believe America is at its best when we lead with compassion. Your compassion is selective, Karoline cut in sharply, before being reminded by the moderator to wait her turn. Newsom glanced her way, attempting grace. We may disagree, but I respect anyone who shows up with passion. Good night. Then it was Karoline's turn. She stood, not for drama, for clarity. I didn't come here to trade sound bites. I came here because people are fed up with the crime, with the inflation, with the forced conformity, and most of all, with politicians like Gavin Newsom who say everything and mean nothing. Her voice was sharp, sincere, final. You say I'm extreme? You think I'm too direct? Good. Because I don't answer to lobbyists or studio applause. I answer to working Americans who can't afford your utopia. She turned directly to the camera. And to everyone watching, if you're tired of being ignored, if you're tired of smooth talkers who smile while they destroy your freedom, I hear you, and I won't stop fighting for you. The studio erupted. Not just applause, shouts. Newsom sat still, hands clenched, gaze locked on the table. Karoline walked off set with her chin high, the crowd roaring behind her. Outside, reporters swarmed. Microphones chased her. A Fox anchor whispered, "That wasn't a debate. That was a reckoning." Within hours, clips of her final words had gone viral. The title across every screen, "She answered to the people and tore Newsom down in the process." Thank you for watching this explosive showdown between Karoline Leavitt and Governor Gavin Newsom. No matter where you stand politically, one thing is clear. The voices challenging the status quo are growing louder, and tonight proved just how powerful a single voice can be. If you believe in truth over spin, courage over comfort, and accountability over smooth-talking politics, you're in the right place. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to stay updated on the next clash that's already brewing behind the scenes. And remember, this isn't just a story, it's a signal. The battle of ideas is on, and we're just getting started.